Okay, so
Ackerman also banned the senior chant.
identify the type of function from the table. So this is all the way back from 9.1. So if I give you a function table, how can you tell me if it's linear, quadratic, or so forth? How am I going to determine if this is quadratic or not? What do I have to do? This will be all the way back from 9.1. You will have one question like this off of your quiz today.
Don't you have to find? You have to factor them out. So
Not factor them out.
the M and the A.
Nope.
No, I'm wrong.
Just gotta find the y.
Nope. Kind of something with the y. You're right. What do you mean? Yeah, so how do I get the difference from 7 to 4? So, okay, what about from 4 to 7? What about from 7 to 16? And then 16 to 31. $15? Are you sure? From 16 to 31? Is it 15?
Yeah.
Okay, 15. Okay, now, if these differences were the same the very first time around, it would be linear. But they're not the same. So we're going to go through and find the second difference between our second set of numbers, okay? So to get from -3 to +3, what am I going to have to add or subtract to it? So what am I going to have to add or subtract to -3 to get to +3?
6.
What about from +3 to +9?
6.
9 to 15?
6.
All right. So it's quadratic because why?
The second thing.
Second difference
Matches.
is what? Not the same. What's the word I want to see? Is constant. Very good. Okay. So this next I asked, what is the vertex of the quadratic function? So I gave you this quadratic function. I didn't give you a graph. Okay? If it was a graph, it'd be pretty easy to find the vertex. But first of all, what is a vertex? If I give you a graph, what's the vertex on that graph? What's that vertex refer to?
The point where the
Parabola?
parabola starts, or like where you start it at.
Yeah, so it's either the highest point or the lowest point, and it's where that axis of symmetry goes right through that vertex, right? So the vertex is made up of an ordered pair then. We need an x and a y. So I have this quadratic function, and I don't know what an x value is, and I don't know what the y value is. So I need to find the ordered pair. So how am I going to find an ordered pair when I'm just given a quadratic? So I need the x value and a y value. So how am I going to find that ordered pair? What am I going to have to find first? Can I find my y first or my x first? Say it again.
X equals -b. And
Good. So what do I substitute for negative b, or what do I substitute for b?
6.
-6. And what do I substitute for a?
1.
So I am using the axis of symmetry equation to get what letter x is going to represent. Okay? 2 negatives equal a, and then 2 times 1 is 2. And when I divide those out, 6 divided by 2 is going to equal. Okay, so right here it says x equals 3. So I know part of my ordered pair, my x value is 3. Questions on that? Okay, now how do I find the y value though? Because my vertex we said is an ordered pair. It's that point where the maximum or minimum runs through, or the axis of symmetry. So how do I find my y value?
You replace x with 3.
Yeah, so I use the same quadratic, so y equals, and anytime I see that x, I'm going to replace it with 3. Okay, and then I'm going to simplify using order of operations. So what am I going to end up with here? 3 times 3, not 3 times 2. 3 squared. 9. Then
18.
then plus 11. Okay? So then y is going to equal, what's 9 minus 18 plus 11? So 9 minus 18 is negative 9. Negative 9 plus 11 is 2. So right here is my vertex. 3, 2. My ordered pair. It's where that axis of symmetry will run right through that point. Now, which one of these, now the x value represents where that parabola will cross through the x axis. What's my y value tell me about my parabola? The y value is going to tell me how high or how low it is, right? Because it goes up and down. What's that high point called? If it's way up here, maximum. And if it's way down here, that's my minimum. Okay. Find the y-intercept, not the y-axis, the y-intercept of the following quadratic function. What's the y-intercept going to be here? I think that's from 9.2. The y-intercept. This is just a look and see. You don't have to calculate anything for the y-intercept. What is it? So we're going to write it in y-intercept form. 0, 1. How'd you get that, Riley? Yeah, it's the c in our standard form. Remember our standard form? ax squared plus bx plus c. The y-intercept is that number that's off by itself, that does not have a variable attached to it. All right, questions on the front side. Okay, do me a favor, make sure you box your y-intercept answer and you box your ordered pair. And then flip it over. Now the back side of your opener is going to be similar to 2 questions on your quiz today, okay? Except for one of the questions, you won't have to fill out as much information. So one question, you'll have to fill out all of this, and another question, you'll just have like 3, I believe. Okay, so it says graph the quadratic function. Before we start graphing, though, is this going to have a minimum or a maximum value?
Minimum.
It's going to have a minimum. Why?
Because there's no negative sign.
Yeah, our first coefficient does not have a negative sign, so it's going to have a minimum. Which means when I go to graph my parabola, and is it going to open up, or is it going to open down? Good, Ben. It's going to open up. Okay? What else can I tell about my quadratic before I have to start using some formulas and calculating?
It's going to have a fraction.
What's that?
It's going to have a fraction.
Well, I'm not worried about that yet. What else can I tell by just looking at my quadratic?
The y is
My y-intercept, right? What's my y-intercept?
0,
0, 2. Remember that y-intercept comes from that third term that is by itself. I can also tell the domain. What's the domain? All real numbers. All right, at that point, that's all I can tell. That's all I know. So, to graph the quadratic function, what am I going to find first?
The axis is
The axis of symmetry, which is the x. So we use x, that's way too big, equals negative, what do I put in for b?
negative 2.
Over 2 times a, which is 5. Okay, when we simplify that, that's going to equal,
Negative 2 over 10.
I disagree, 2 negatives equal a,
2 over 10.
so 2 over 10. And then we're going to simplify that, because if I take 2 divided by 10, I'm going to get a decimal. So I'm going to put this in simplest form. So 2 over 10 in simplest form is going to be what?
1, 5, or
1
over 5.
1 over 5, 1/5. Okay? If you do not know how to do that in your calculator, what you would simply do is type in 2, your fraction button, which is at ABC, 10th, and equal, and then it simplifies it for you. Okay? You can't take 2 divided by 10, because that'll give you a decimal. You got to use your fraction button to get that there. So our x is going to...
0.2.
Thank you. 2 divided by 10 is 0.2, you guys. X is going to equal, so our axis of symmetry, X is going to equal 1/5. So in our vertex, I now have the X value, which is 1/5. So now I'm ready to find my Y value. How do I find my Y value again? We did it on the very...
Place, substitute the X.
Yeah, we're going to substitute. So every time I see that X, what do I substitute in for it? 1/5. So F of X equals 5. Okay, so I'm substituting 1/5. So this is where you're going to want to reference back to your calculator again. What is 1/5 squared? So 1/5 times 1/5. What's that going to equal? Or you can take 1/5 caret top 2 and get 1/25. 1 over 25. Okay? So now I'm going to have the function of X equals 5 times 1/25 minus 2 times 1/5 plus 2. Okay? What's my next step?
So, times. It'd be 1.
You took 5 times, not 1/5. You're taking 5 times 1/25.
Oh.
Yeah, don't forget that too in front of there. Try that again. 5 times 1/25.
This would be
What'd you get?
625.
You took 5 times 125.
Oh, I did.
5
Oh,
times 1 fraction. 1/5.
Yeah.
I think that's what Danny said. Is that what you said, Danny?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 1/5. Now we can take 2 times 1/5, or excuse me, negative 2 times 1/5. What's that going to equal? Then 1, fraction button, negative 2/5 plus 2. All right, last step here, we're going to go ahead and do all of our adding and subtracting from left to right. So, easiest thing to probably do would be type in 1/5 minus 2/5 plus 2.
1 4/5.
1 4/5. You guys agree?
Yeah.
So my X value is,
1 4/5.
or excuse me, my Y value is 1 4/5. Okay. 1 4/5. Where would you graph that? Between what two numbers would that be between?
1 and 2.
2 and 3.
1 and 2. Yeah, it'll be between 1 and 2. Okay. Now, our one other point, remember, is going to be symmetrical to our y-intercept. Because we're going to have that vertex, then we're going to have the y-intercept. We want that one other point symmetrical to the y-intercept. So if I want it to be symmetrical to my y-intercept, what's going to be my y value for my one other point?
4.
No. For my y value, if I want it to be symmetrical, if I want it to be right across, for my one other point, what do I use for my y value?
Oh.
2. I think somebody said it over here. Now, my x, how do I find my one other point with my x? One, you could just graph it and then count it out. Or you could look at your x value and your vertex and double it. So what's 1/5 doubled? So what's 1/5 times 1/5?
2. Wait, 1, comma, 25. Or 1, 25.
Multiply it out. Take 1/5 times 1/5.
1, 1. 1 is 1.
I don't want a decimal.
Well, it's not. It's 1. Oh, you know what? 25.
It's what?
1 over 25.
1 over 25. I thought Ben was saying point. I do apologize, guys. I am congested and my hearing is a little clogged. Did you say decimals? Minor detail. Okay. Last thing I want to answer is my range. Where would my range be?
The range. It would be f of x
So the function of x, and because it's minimum,
That'd be
greater than or equal to, and then what was my minimum value? How high or low am I going to graph that?
1, 4, 1, 4.
1 and 4/5.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'll graph
All right, let's graph it. What do I go to graph first?
that. X. Vertex.
My vertex. So 1/5 will be between 1 and 2. So 1/5 and 1 4/5. So,
We need between 0 and 1.
right? So if I do 1/5, it would be between 0 and 1. And if I would do 1 4/5, it'd be between 1 and 2. So there's my vertex, okay? Now I'm going to make sure that axis of symmetry is going to go through that vertex. The next point I'm going to plot is my y-intercept, which is 0, 2. Ooh, it's right there, right? And then I'm going to graph 1/25 and 2, which is going to be right there. So when I go to graph this, I'm going to make sure that I show that it has a minimum, okay? I'm going to show that it graphs up. Now, am I going to be, when we're dealing with fractions, am I going to be so super picky about exact? No. What I'm really going to look to make sure that you graph correctly is your y-intercept, and I want to make sure that you have the correct curve, okay? Now, if you did this on your graphing calculator, it'd be so much easier to graph because it gives you those exact coordinates. But as long as you have something similar and it shows that it has a minimum and it shows that it opens up, you guys will be okay. Any questions? All right.